Anya Stroud. All in favor?
Yeah. We need the dues.
Good. Anya Stroud will be honored and remembered. Next slide, please, D-Day. Just a minute. Just settle down. This is Kate Diaz. She's a main character from the Coalition games.
You'll go with me.
There's a place up north. I think we can find you answers there.
Now, Corporal, you're coming back to Northvira. That is a direct order.
Well, Captain. Screw your order. This isn't about you. It's about me.
Out of all the things about Gears of War 4 and Gears 5, there is one thought about these games which need addressing. This one in particular has not only caused a significant divide in the Gears of War fandom and all fellow Gears of War communities related, but it has bothered me for one. Even back to the first entry of the sequel trilogy Gears of War 4 story, which was borderline satisfactory. I never devoted too much time addressing this issue because both of the games entirely had much bigger problems to discuss. But now I believe the time has come. The problem in Gears of War concerns Kait Diaz. Kate Diaz is a paradoxical being within the Coalition's Gears of War games, as she is a totally useless character elevated to place of importance by the narratives. She is counted as one of the primary characters in the sequel trilogy featured on all the advertisements and marketing of each game, yet she has no personality to speak of. She contributes nothing to the narratives of the games on her own, yet circumstances in the narratives of the games force her into a position of relevancy. In other words, she is a being that is involved, yet she is not involved, which as a result, Kate Diaz is a character that vexes players. She has no real reason to be so prominent, yet there she is in spite of herself. She is a passive reacting passenger who gets swept along by the stories. She goes to see Marcus Phoenix because James takes her there. She goes to Talon Dam because Marcus takes her there. She goes to Mount Kadar because Marcus sends her there, and that's where she will find her answers, and because she thinks Marcus is a honcho. She goes to the land of Vazgar because Baird takes her there. She goes to fight outside the walls of New Ephyra because Clayton Carmine has a job for her. She gets involved in the main plot points of the stories because she just happens to be in the right place at the right time. Kate's emotional connection to the stories in these new Gears of War games overall is so non-existent that it gets to the point multiple times where she's not entirely sure she wants to be a part of it. And as much as this is a problem with Kate Diaz, it's a core problem in the sequel Gears of War games in general. None of the new Gears of War characters push the plots on their own volition. None of them have any real powerful goals that they personally need to accomplish. They either just do what they're told, or they happen to be in the right place randomly. If the main characters don't have any actual emotional investment in the story, why would players ever care about anything they're seeing?
Who's going in first?
Hey, JD. I've rock, paper, scissors you for it.
Seriously? You're terrible at rock, paper, scissors.
The reason for this paradox problem in the new Gears game stems from how the games attempt to convince players that Kate actually does have a character without providing any hard evidence to support the claim. Though Kate Diaz is a primary in these Gears of War games, she is absent-minded for large swathes of the games. But whenever she does show up or pop up in an event, moment, or scene, she always has this dialogue about how involved she is. Like, she has known James Phoenix and Del Walker for some time, yet she has been doing a lot of growth behind the scenes or off-screen despite having no stated objectives or any motivations. That growth happened when players were forced to make a choice saving James or Del from being killed by Queen Reyna in Gears 5. Why did it happen? Because we're being told it happened. We are supposed to believe Kate's relationship with these two characters is strong based on that. Yet with all of this dialogue throughout both games, she remains an empty shell whose contributions to the narratives happen in spite of who she is, rather than because of who she is. To elaborate, players are being told that she's a character, yet the claim doesn't ring true. She is a weird and inconsistent being that doesn't feel at all like a real person. She is a dull, bland being who has no flaws of any kind, with no flavor, and her place in the world of Gears of War is ambiguous and unrestricted, and only somewhat works whenever she is around prominent Gears of War characters. Overall, Kate Diaz is a perfect being that can just blow through every obstacle and do anything she wants in her way, when none of these so-called attributes about her have been visually proven. We never see anything at all to justify the characteristics about her. We never see anything that would warrant her being in charge of a military squad and all military operations in the first place, except for a couple few second clips in Gears 5 of Damon Baird and Garen Paddock showing and saying they only deal with her.
You want these two along? Fine. But I deal with you, not them.
You good with that?
You good with that?
Marcus Phoenix and Damon Baird in the original games were such great characters because they were both the opposite of perfect, and because despite that they both made themselves stand out. And even when they were made in charge of military squads and military operations, they were still being babysitted by their superiors until they gradually grew into proper soldiers and leaders throughout the games. But in these new Gears of War games, there is just about none of that. No growth, no development, nothing. Overall, people aren't who they are because they prove themselves as such, but just because the games say so. And that's not interesting, nor is it exciting. That's just boring! Kate Diaz hasn't gone through any legitimate character development or barely even a single iota, and that honestly is not a good thing. Not to mention the developers want to make her one of the champions of the Gears of War franchise, yet she truthfully hasn't done anything to elevate herself to that status. Taking a closer look after 2 games in, Kate Diaz is a specimen that is fueled by independence. She is a sassy bitch, disrespecting other characters and fellow allies' authorities, doesn't care about anybody else but her problems, nor does she carry any weight of responsibility exclusively. Basically Kate's entire being in these Gears of War games. She has complete freedom to do whatever she wants, and all the other characters bend the knee to her with no justifications why, and treat her like she's that most popular girl in high school.
I can't go to Taco Bell. I'm on an all-carb diet. God, Karen, you are so stupid.
They say that you're a homeschooled jungle freak who's a less hot version of me. Yeah. So don't try to act so innocent. You can take that fake apology and shove it right up your hair.
She is a pretentious being masquerading as something amazing, but when you really look deep into it, you realize that there is no real substance to be found here. I don't know what the developers are going for with Kate Diaz, but in the world of reality, none of these qualities are champion material, nor do they make her a good person, especially not the leadership kind. If you line up Kate Diaz against any other character in the Gears of War universe, like Sophia Hendrick, Jay Stratton, Dominic Santiago, Alicia Valera, Alex Brand, or Benjamin Carmine, it doesn't matter. She is always going to fall short. Because unlike the other examples I named, she's just not a character, and therefore she really should not be the protagonist. And when you have a whole story structured around a being like this to emphasize and push forward, it breaks the immersion and just throws you out of it completely. While also pushing away the larger Gears of War demographics that enjoy the stories by making it technically not for them and only catering to a single or specific demographics. Kate's addition to the Gears of War franchise was shoehorned and misplaced. The original Gears of War games built a lineup of memorable characters for almost a decade, and all of these characters are now getting pushed to the side as passive, secondary plot devices. It's utter betrayal to cast those aside so some random chick, after just being introduced, shoved in and take over, and that's a very big sell. And the fact that all the other characters in the Gears of War games are getting shafted all because of her is not acceptable. And I found it incredibly bizarre how the developers, including the narrative leading up to Gears 5, was that it was a revolutionary Gears of War game that depicts the franchise's first strong female character. When in 2011, in the Gears of War franchise, we got arguably one of the franchise's best. So why is it that Kate Diaz doesn't work and she is being pushed? Well, it's due to the press junkets, the debacle of them, the initial trailers, and the activism of many of the people involved in the making of the game that initially alienated the hardcore Gears of War communities. For a character to be the star of any franchise, it should be allocated to the ones most deserving, to the characters that worked the hardest for it, not because of who they identify themselves as or what they stand for. And that's all I'm going to talk about on politics, so let's stick to the games themselves. Furthermore, I am all for new blood to be added into the Gears of War franchise, but if you're going to add someone new, especially someone who's going to be the star, for the love of God, give the audience some legitimate evidence to take them seriously. We can't just say Kate Diaz is great or a hero because she was quote-unquote involved in a few instances, while overlooking how truly vile she is in all other aspects, especially to almost the entirety of the Gears of War fiction. Identity is everything to a franchise, and if you change that, repercussions are going to follow, and history has proven time and time again, if you got nothing else going for it with a nobody that no one's invested in, underdeveloped or not, leading the way, then it is going to suck. But for many people or gamers that did play these new Gears of War games and got familiar with this character, liked the character and what the character's all about, that is going to be the selling point for them and they'll love it for that. But don't expect everyone to love it with you, it's not going to happen. Going back to Anya Stroud, for instance, she was an interesting and memorable character because she was this good, optimistic, kind, caring, and colorful soul in an otherwise horrifying, murky, brutal, full of bigotry and crooked world, while Kate Diaz is an ignorant and arrogant douche. The developers could have easily made her into an icon in the Gears of War franchise, and all they have done was just figure out how to make her a part of the narratives. We should focus on the one who literally started this new sequel trilogy, grow his relationship with his legendary parents, his fellow comrades, and stop the great threat that is upon them all. And stop wasting time with somebody who is only important because, and who is not genuine.
Screw your order. This isn't about you, it's about me.
I'll be sure to take that under advisement, Kate. Now move it.